To say that Days of the New's history was tumultuous would be an understatement. The band's origins dated back to 1995. Frontman Travis Meeks would grow up in Charlestown, Indiana, which was separated from his future home Louisville, Kentucky by the Ohio River. Meeks had a musician father named Gary who recorded with the Box Tops, which was fronted by Alex Chilton. Gary would bond with his son Travis over their mutual love of Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. But despite their shared love of music, Travis had a very unstable upbringing that likely contributed to his volatile behavior. To distract himself from external events in his life, Travis would find comfort in music. His father Gary would recall to Leo Weekly, "I had a little recording set up at home. When he would get all whacked out, he'd get in his room and record these songs acoustic. I was just blown away by it." That's when he went ahead and said he would take the bull by the horns, doing the acoustical stuff. Travis was a real introvert. I always knew he was. The music was kind of his saving grace. It was his therapy and his way of communicating, he'd remember. You can't really understand Travis Meeks without first knowing the story of his father, Gary. His father wasn't a great role model. In fact, Travis's later life would mirror that of his dad. His father at the age of 13 would start playing guitar professionally, and it would be a local Louisville, Kentucky DJ who worked at the station WAKY who took notice of Gary. The DJ knew people in Memphis who worked in the music industry and opened doors for Gary to start working in the studio at the young age of 16. By the middle of the 70s, Gary's manager was urging the young musician to relocate to Nashville and try a stab at being a country artist. He would recall to Leo Weekly, "At that time in 1974, all the Memphis guys moved to Nashville, and it ultimately led to the Nashville sound. I wanted to rock and roll and wasn't much interested in Nashville at the time. The Memphis thing was more rock and blues," he'd say. By the age of 19, Gary was working as a touring musician, but life on the road was difficult, so he took a liking to alcohol. He would recall to the same publication, "I'd hear all the stories about Elvis. I'd see him and think, he's the king, and he don't seem like he's having too much fun. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist. It's so hard in the business because everybody wants to stroke you. It gets pretty sick," he'd say. He would end up marrying a woman who gave birth to their son Travis, but the couple split up by the time their son was just 2. Gary would disappear for several years and wouldn't re-emerge in his son's life until he was about 6 and finally sober. It was at that age that Travis started living with his father. And Travis, for his part, struggled in school due to his psychotic episodes, and it wasn't until he was an adult that he would be finally diagnosed as having Asperger's, a milder form of autism. Travis soon became entrenched in drugs at a young age, and would be in and out of treatment centers between the age of 11 and 15. Gary would transfer him to special schools, but did little to alleviate his behavior problems. But despite all this, Travis still had his music. In the mid-90s, Travis would meet drummer Matt Tall and bassist Jesse Vest, who would share a mutual love of bands like Metallica and Pantera. Prior to adding guitarist Todd Whitener, the band was a trio who originally played experimental rock and groove metal, calling themselves Dead Reckoning. Meeks would tell Billboard magazine the original sound was, and I quote, "kind of like Metallica's And Justice for All, an aggressive feel but not that nasty." The band would soon move to Louisville, Kentucky and play clubs in the city, and change their sound to more acoustical instruments and add guitarist Todd Whitener. Meeks' vocal style would see comparisons to both Alice in Chains frontman Lane Staley and The Doors' Jim Morrison. The band also underwent a name change around this time to Days of the New. Travis, for his part, had written Days of the New's first album pretty much all by himself, with the frontman admitting to Billboard magazine that his bandmates were a little surprised at his proposal to change the group's sound, saying, "Bringing the band together, Days of the New, was one of the most difficult things, because we're talking, the music was already written, the guitar player didn't know how to play acoustic guitar, I had to teach the drummer how to lay back and understand that the acoustic guitar was the main instrument. To make that first album happen, I had to pull my hair out to make these guys focus. I spent all my time trying to get these guys to focus," he would say. Days of the New would win a Battle of the Bands competition in Louisville, which brought them to the attention of REM and Nirvana producer Scott Litt, who signed the group. Days of the New was the first band Litt would sign on his label Outpost Recordings, which was distributed by Geffen Records. Litt would go on to produce their debut album, which was released in 1997. Their first album, also known as Yellow, would spawn 3 huge singles, including Touch, Peel and Stand, The Downtown, and Shelf in the Room. The album would go on to sell over 1.5 million copies. And keep in mind, these guys were barely out of high school when they got their first taste of success. During the promotional cycle for the first album, frontman Travis Meeks was hinting where the band could go next, telling MTV at the time, "If you listen to the current album, there's a world flavor to it, an ethnic feel. There'll be a lot of that on the new record too, and female vocals would match that. There'll be more Spanish influences on the guitar, and we're going to have a Celtic feel present also." The band's success also brought about a lot of internal problems. During the tour to support their debut record, MTV was starting to report that following a cancelled show in Florida, the band members appeared physically injured, with some of them sporting black eyes and bruises after an apparent brawl with each other. Some critics weren't fans of the group, pointing to their youth, writing them off as a hard rock version of bubblegum pop stars like Hanson, or America's answer to the Australian grunge band Silverchair. Side note guys, I've done a few videos on Silverchair, the links to those are down below. Meeks would respond to critics telling MTV at the time, "All I know is that I've had a pretty effed up life, but I back it up with music, with the words and emotions I express in the songwriting. We're not trying to market my problems. We're not trying to sell a ton of records with it. We're just being ourselves, and if critics are trying to dismiss that, well, critics will be critics. I met a lot of people on tour who understand what I'm getting at, and that's comfortable," he would say. It was also during the same promotional cycle that the band's label and his bandmates would see just how unpredictable and volatile Travis Meeks' behavior could be. In the summer of 1998, Days of the New got a strange opening slot, touring with both Metallica and Alice in Chains guitarist Jerry Cantrell. Given that the band's sound was drastically different from Metallica, frontman Travis Meeks would criticize the billing, claiming the band should have been touring with Dave Matthews. Ahead of that tour with Metallica, Meeks would also lash out against his bandmates in the press, and going on to say he would be firing them from the group. Label executives would scramble to brush off Meeks' claims in the press, but by the end of 1998, the original lineup of the band was done. Following the dissolution of the group, Meeks posted a rambling message on a fan board where he apologized for, and I quote, "giving the impression that Days of the New was a band and promoting it as a band format," going on to say, "It wasn't truly a band format. It was my fault for leading you on and setting you up to get attached to the prior members." Meeks, for his part, would claim that his bandmates left over being jealous of him because he wrote most of their songs and collected a bulk of the publishing money. It had been rumored for a long time that Meeks fired the other members, a claim that he since denied. Rolling Stone would publish an article on February 6, 1999, confirming the band's breakup, as well as quoting the group's manager, who cited, and I quote, "artistic differences for the split," citing Meeks' desire to change the band's sound for their second record. Rolling Stone would write at the time, "That material injected with lush orchestration, Middle Eastern instrumentation, and experimental vocals did not mesh with the band's Metallica-esque sensibilities." In the same article, the band's manager was quoted as saying, "When you hear the new music, you will understand why these guys had to split. It doesn't rock towards that metal influence. It's more symphonic, and those guys didn't want to be limited by that. Those three will be fine. They're in the studio doing their own thing and looking for a singer now." Meeks, for his part, would keep the Days of the New band name, while the group's ex-members would go on to form the band C14 before renaming themselves Tantric. Meeks' former bandmates had some success with their own endeavor, with Tantric's debut album going platinum, but following their brief success, they saw a further decline in record sales with each subsequent release. By the late 90s, Meeks would spend time at his Distillery Commons studio in Louisville, Kentucky, and by late 1998, he would already assemble close to 30 songs, which formed the basis of Days of the New's second album, also known as the Green Album or Days of the New 2. While the band's debut record was known for being fairly stripped down and acoustic, their sophomore record was much more bombastic, featuring a choir, orchestral arrangements, female vocals, and even electronic percussion, and a young female singer named Nicole Scherzinger, who paused her studies at Wright State University to work with Meeks. The frontman claimed he wanted a female singer on the record to, and I quote, "deliver some world operatic textures and sounds," and she would perform on 6 of the album's songs and would even tour with the group. Meeks would claim the two had a fling despite the fact that she had a boyfriend, and following the band's tour to support Green, Scherzinger and Meeks would grow apart, with the frontman claiming that she didn't seem to understand music very well. In 1998, Travis would tell Billboard magazine what he hoped to accomplish with the group's second album, revealing, "I wanted it to be deeper, have richer texture. The album is closer to my creative vision, bigger, better sounds and arrangements where all kinds of ideas can converge, whether it be orchestral bits or rhythm samples. The songs are intentionally more direct and more confrontational. I want to shake people up. I want them to walk away from this record thinking long and hard, not so much about the music but about their lives. It was during the band's tour on their second album that Meeks dealt with a kidney stone and soon became addicted to pain medication and moved on to other drugs. Despite being well received by both critics and fans, the album didn't meet commercial expectations, selling around 450,000 copies, which was significantly less than their debut album. As Meeks turned his attention to recording the group's third album, there was a major shakeup at the label. Geffen Records would be acquired by Interscope, who dissolved Outpost Records, the label that the band was signed to. Jordan Schur, who was responsible for helping Limp Bizkit become popular, was assigned to work with Days of the New. Rick Smith, Meeks' manager, would tell Leo Weekly, "No one at Interscope had any feel for Travis. It was a situation where nobody understood. They wanted a single from him." The band would end up sinking $500,000 to record their third album, only to have Schur force the band to re-record the material. Days of the New would release Red, also known as Days of the New 3, 2 weeks after 9/11, and it sputtered out, only selling 80,000 copies. It was around this time that Rick Rubin took notice of the band and wanted to sign the group to his Def Jam Recordings label, but Interscope didn't want to let the band out of their contract. By 2002, it was reported that Meeks was considered by former Guns N' Roses members to front their new project Velvet Revolver, but that would end up falling through, and they would end up going with Scott Weiland, formerly of Stone Temple Pilots. Side note, guys, I've done a whole video on Velvet Revolver's career. The link is down below. In 2005, Meeks appeared on the A&E program Intervention that chronicled his struggle with addiction, and it was around this time he started to write Days of the New's fourth album, tentatively titled Purple, but it would never see the light of day. And it was around this time that he was diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome. Meeks would tell Leo Weekly, "I did not have the tools to stand up with Asperger's, and I had no one to back me up. People kiss my ass all the time. They enabled me. I got my ass kissed so much that it just cornered me. I would complain because they would kiss my ass. I couldn't stand it," he'd say. Interscope, meanwhile, released a best-of compilation in 2008, and it was around this time that Meeks gave an interview to a Louisville, Kentucky publication, giving an update on the band's upcoming record, claiming the fourth release would have a very theatrical sound, incorporating instruments such as cello and the harp. Several of the songs planned for the record would in fact be performed live, including Where It Ends, Superhero, and Nothing Is Wrong. Meeks would stay out of the news until 2011, when former Alice in Chains bassist Mike Starr was found dead in his home. Starr had been staying with Meeks and his wife and was found unresponsive in his bedroom, and the cause of death was ruled an overdose. By the way, guys, I've done a whole video on the life and death of Mike Starr of Alice in Chains. The link is down below. Meeks would re-emerge in 2014 when it was announced he'd be reuniting with the original lineup of Days of the New to do a summer tour and record a new EP that fall. It was a reason to celebrate for longtime fans, but the only problem was that the reunion tour would end in shambles. At a reunion show in Missouri, the band abruptly ended their set due to Meeks being too inebriated to play, according to reports. During that show, bassist Jesse Vest abruptly grabbed the microphone and told the crowd that this was the band's final show of the tour. Meeks' bandmates released several statements to fans claiming that there were many things to address, and they didn't want to keep feeding the negativity, saying, "We do want to let it be clear that Travis was in no way pressured into this reunion. In fact, it was very much the other way around. Travis literally begged us to do the reunion tour on the phone and text and in person, and he had burned so many bridges in his career that no one would hire him to do a show anymore for the fear that he would not show up. He knew that the original lineup would lend credibility to this project and it would help him rebuild his career," they would say in a statement. In the years that followed, Meeks disappeared from the public spotlight, with news of a few arrests and a single performance in 2018 in Madison, Indiana, making the rounds. Those close to him claimed he was back living in Utah, and just last year it came out in August of 2020 that Meeks was arrested for being drunk in public in Arizona. Earlier this year, reports surfaced of unreleased material or possibly older bootleg material showing up on streaming platforms including Spotify without any promotion, with some people debating whether it's part of the band's long-awaited fourth album. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.